Well, I want to welcome everybody to Western Mountains Baptist Church Microcast once again, and I would say I want to welcome you here, but we're actually in your office, so thanks for having me in here with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is a really special one for us. This is one that we've been wanting to do for a while. Is to have our very own pastor here, Tom DuBois, is our guest tonight. So we're just going to talk about a couple things, but it's good to see you here.
Good to be here, always.
So a couple things I was thinking of, maybe a couple quick questions to get out of the way before we get into what we wanted to talk about was, in case there's some people that maybe don't know much about you.
Sure.
So two quick questions that I was thinking of that might help answer that. So one was, how did you become the pastor here, and how long have you been the pastor here?
Wow, quick questions, not quick answers. Well, the second one's quick. Been here 18 years this past September. So that's the easy, quick one. The much longer answer is how did we become pastor here?
Right.
This church was kind of birthed out of Farmington Baptist Church, as you know. You were part of that. The Kingfield area had a vibrant youth group that you and your wife and a couple of other couples were very much part of. And many of those families were coming down to Farmington, and it seemed like a really good time and opportunity to start a church with those families as the base. And so Earl Edgerly, the pastor at the time, would come up on Sunday nights, and I was a worship leader at Farmington at the time, and I came up a couple of Sunday nights to sort of help out a little bit, but frankly there were enough really talented musicians that were already up here that wasn't necessary. And I'm not a talented musician, I just was leading well, I guess. So through all of that, the church got on its feet doing Sunday night services, constituted not that long later, hired a pastor who was here just under a year, who left under, frankly, good circumstances, but left still.
Right.
And so I think that was in April of 2006. The church, the elders and deacons that were here, started to look for pulpit supply, and I ended up being one of those guys. There were four, I believe, four on a rotation, so I preached here in May, and then June, and then July, and then August, and when September came around, I was just feeling like that's not a sustainable model. It's great to have people filling a pulpit. It's great to have good teaching and a variety of teaching. That's also good. But a church needs a shepherd.
Right.
And so I approached the leadership and said, "Hey, I don't know if I'm the guy, but maybe I am, and maybe you can try me and I can try you, and we can see if this works out." And the church at the end of September of that year decided to do that on an interim basis, and we did that for 6 months or so, and it's an easy date to remember. On April Fools of 2007, the church hired me as their pastor for full time, no interim tag anymore. So that's kind of how that all happened. So first pastorate, and been here 18 years.
Been a good 18 years.
It's not been without its challenges, but it's overall, I would say, very good.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it.
Well, I think any kind of, church leadership or pastoring, when you're dealing with people, broken people, it can get messy. So,
Yep.
those times can get rough. So recently, you have taken a sabbatical.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of one of the things that we wanted to talk about tonight. So how did that come about?
Well, probably a year and a half or so ago, one of our deacons, who had come from a church out of New Hampshire, had his old pastor come and stay at his place while he was in Florida for a month, and he was on sabbatical. So that was kind of my first introduction to that whole concept of sort of that extended time away from church and what that might look like and what its purpose was. And his name was Josh, and he came. He actually joined us in our services while he was on his sabbatical here. So we get to pick his brain a little bit and talk, and then there were a couple of other mentors that I've picked up along the way. One of them, a fellow by the name of Gary Richardson out of Mississippi, and I talked with him about it a little bit, and he said, I've had one, it was great. another guy out of Texas, Bruce Webb, who actually came and met with our leadership as well. You know, Bruce was a big advocate of the idea of a sabbatical, and it was funny because I went to research it online, and it seems like the first 3 or 4 pages of Google all were related to the business world and not necessarily to the church, which I thought was funny, since sabbatical in my mind is kind of a Christian word,
right.
you know, talking about the Sabbath. But then here are all these companies that are doing this and seeing the benefit for their, you know, their CEOs and their leaders and all this to take an extended break and kind of refocus and retool and rest. And I thought, you know, the business world is figuring this out, churches are figuring this out, maybe it's time to give that a try. And so, yeah, I brought that to the leadership, and they were surprisingly on board. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect until the day we stepped out the door on that. A new concept for me. I mean, I've literally had a job since I was 10. You know, and I think the longest break I ever had was I had one summer when I was in college where I had a little trouble finding work. It was probably 3 weeks. I think that was the longest period of time I ever had where I didn't work. So to think about an extended period of time away from work was completely foreign to me. So it was kind of challenging to figure out how that was going to look and feel and go. But you know, hindsight, looking back, it was a really good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did that kind of look like? You know, what I know, you know, we've talked, and I mean, you had some pretty cool experiences while you were there. So,
Sure.
So you know, what did that look like for you?
For us, we took the first 12 days or so and literally got away. Our last Sunday here was the closing program for our Vacation Bible School. So preached a sermon that, you know, followed sort of the VBS week, and then we had a wonderful potluck dinner on the grounds with everybody, and then our vehicle was packed and we headed out and spent some time up in the Canadian Maritimes and in the down east coast of Maine, and man, it was, you know, time in God's creation, which was fantastic. I mean, we saw places we'd never seen before, and just really got to appreciate the hand of God in that. But just the one-on-one time with my wife, the one-on-one time with God, read a bunch of books while we were away, and just, you know, obviously read the scriptures too, but there were a couple of different books that I had been interested in reading, and one that I had started hadn't finished yet, and so it was, you know, finishing that, and just, you know, getting in touch with some of the things that about what it means to be a pastor. What are the pitfalls? What are the traps that pastors can fall into, and kind of assessing where I was at in my pastorate. And I hadn't really ever taken time to sit down and kind of do that. So it was great. Yeah.
You know, it's clearly something in the scriptures. We see Jesus over and over again. After he does something huge,
Mm-hmm.
you know, he goes and he takes time by himself. You know that, right. So that time of rest is important. So if it's good enough for Jesus, then I guess it's good enough for you too.
Yeah, and we kind of did it backwards. That first 12 days, we didn't rest like I would have liked to. We ran a little bit, but towards the end of our sabbatical, we were able to get away again for about 10 days, and that was very, very relaxing. Get to spend some time at the generosity of one of our church members on a lake up in Rangeley, and that was true rest.
Right.
You know, we really got to really recharge the batteries there. That was great.
Yeah, I think, you know, those first 12 days, I think sometimes that's something that you need to kind of fill your mind with something else so that you can get that disconnect.
Right,
you know?
Right, yeah. And that it did work from that perspective, because, you know, we were on the run and thinking about next destinations and all that kind of stuff, and not necessarily thinking about what we'd kind of left behind.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So what were some of the things that you feel that God really spoke to you on, like he showed you during that time?
I think probably the biggest thing was, you know, what it means to, what it truly means to grow the church. You know, I think a lot of people think about the numbers, you know, seats, you know, bodies in the seats, and budgets and all that kind of stuff. But a couple of the books that I read really concentrated on this idea of growing people spiritually, intentionally mentoring the next generation. Those kinds of things really came home for me in that time. Really understanding what it means to kind of pour into individuals. It's easy to kind of stand up behind the pulpit and preach sermons and teach that way. But I think, and I tell our church leadership team this all the time, if you really want people to be involved, if you're not having that one-on-one conversation, eye to eye, shoulder to shoulder, people don't necessarily jump in. There are a few that do. The extroverts in the world, they show up and within 2 or 3 weeks they're asking about what they can do.
Right.
But boy, they are a rare breed, and so I think it's important that we make those one-on-one connections with people. And I've not done a great job of that myself. I've preached it to my leadership team, but I've not necessarily taken my own advice there as well as I should. So that's one of the things that I've been trying to be much more conscientious about on my return.
So what are some of the things that he showed you that you seem to be getting right?
I think everything I've been reading, it seems like there are churches out there that don't ground themselves well on the Word, particularly in their teaching, and that's a dangerous place to be. And this is nothing to do with me. This is everything to do with the man I served under, Earl Edgerly. Always taught from the Word. I don't remember a sermon where he didn't lay out, passage after passage after passage of Scripture in his teaching. And I've heard guys on the radio, renowned guys, national guys who'll take one verse and kind of go off, and sometimes it's off on a trail that's not necessarily grounded in that word. That was really just a launching pad for something else. And one of the things that has, I think, been good for us, good for me, and good for our church is just to be a church that preaches the Word. And I'll continue to do that till I'm all done.
Good. Standing on the truth. What a better place to stand on, right?
Exactly. I can't go wrong by being in the Word and doing that.
Yeah. So, is there some other things that he led you that you felt like some changes that you need to make? Or
priorities, setting better boundaries. Using my time more wisely. I think we all have those battles, don't we?
Yeah.
And I think being away and having sort of time makes you think about, okay, well, how am I going to spend that time? And then when you come back, you realize, well, that time's pretty finite, and there's a lot of things that tug at that time. Some of them profitable, some of them very unprofitable. So one of the things I'm really trying to concentrate on is understanding what's not profitable and find a way to put that on the back burner as opposed to allowing it to end up on the front burner.
Right.
Frankly, one of those is time on devices. We all have phones that we're carrying around, and I can find myself down a rabbit hole with that, like I'm sure most can, and it's generally unprofitable time.
Right.
And so how do we find ways to prioritize that and use our time wisely, profitably? I mean, you could even do it on the phone. I did it today, reaching out to a couple of people that I didn't see in church that I normally do, and had some great responses to that. It was just easy peasy thing to do while driving.
Right. Yeah. Perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
And remember, there is good things that you can do online, like watching WMBC Microcast.
Good plug.
So I know seeing you know, your renewed spirit, your energy, you know, since you've been back. I know that this has been super fruitful to have you and your wife do that, you know, and so I'm glad that you know, we were led down that road, both you and the leadership, to be able to make that choice. So, you know, thinking about WMBC, you know, what are some of the things that maybe you envision moving forward?
Well, I hope we do more intentional mentoring, you know, and I think that starts in sort of this room, right, with a pastor, elders, deacons group, and but even beyond that, you know, making sure that we are intentionally inviting people to serve in whatever way that might be, you know, whether it's, you know, asking people individually to come to a service ministry project, or asking somebody to co-teach a Sunday school class, or whatever. I think we can't expect people to sort of jump on board without a little encouragement, right?
Right.
I know for me, the Barnabases in my world, my life over the years have meant so much to me. So being that encouragement to others as they kind of figure out the path that God's leading them down, and helping them feel like, yeah, God's using me and good things are happening, and being encouraged in that, I think is a big deal for what it has been for me. So I have to believe it would be for others too.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So something else that you know, want to share with the listeners, or
you know, it's kind of funny. It's Pastor Appreciation Month, and we're doing this, which is kind of goofy. But this church, by giving me that opportunity, has shown a huge amount of appreciation. So really, my Pastor Appreciation Month was probably July and half of August. You know, while we were away, and just to be welcomed back well by this body. You know, we had a big dinner on the grounds the Sunday we came back, and that was fantastic. And people have been really supportive, and that means a lot to me, because I mean, 6 weeks away is a long time. I know some people do, you know, 8 weeks. I've even heard a couple of pastors talk about a 12-week sabbatical. That's a long time, and for churches to sort of adapt to that and figure out how to still function without the leader. Number one, I mean, it showed real maturity on the part of the church to be able to do that, right? That you know, I watched you guys online. You were one of them. Twice? No, once? No, once. Yeah, once. You and Shep and Dean and Jim all filled the pulpit in my absence, and all did a fantastic job. And to know that we've set up a system here that this church can function without a pastor for a time. I don't think it's a forever deal, but for a time was really encouraging to me. And the other piece was, you know, I got to go some other places and see how they do church,
right?
And that was interesting. There's some lessons to be learned there. But I think one of the big things for me was we're doing it well. In comparison to what I saw, we're doing it well. Could we improve? Absolutely.
Sure.
But I love what we're doing here at WMBC. You know, we're kind of this, you know, in the tiny little town of New Portland, and drawing from so many communities. It's kind of exciting to see that, because I think that speaks to potential, and also speaks to opportunity in what we do next, whether it's a plant or something like that. So. Yeah, I think the future is really bright. I think God's hand's been in it, and I look forward to how He's going to continue to use our church to, you know, bring the gospel to a dark world up this way.
Yeah. You know, I think to me, one of the things, you know, and I know that it's been you as well. You know, it's a good reminder that, I mean, this is God's church to begin with. Right. Yeah. You know, and so as long as we continue to follow His lead, I think that's why He's blessing us. Mm-hmm. You know, in being able to do the things that we do. You know, and the conversation that you and I have all the time is like, you know, we the privilege that it is to serve, you know, the King of Kings. I mean, He doesn't need us to do any of this, but, you know, for us to be allowed to be a part of that is pretty cool. So, And as far as the leadership goes, this is all, a lot of it is example that you set, and I mean, we've been through some bumps in the road, but we've had some highs as well, and I think those are always some things that we're always going to have with ministry,
Yeah.
But
I'm glad you said that about privilege, because I've through the Maine Baptist Association and through the Pastors and Wives Retreat, which is kind of a New England event, I run into a lot of different pastors of all ages, guys that have been fresh out of seminary to guys that have been doing it 30 and 40 years, and every once in a while you come across somebody that seems like it's a duty and obligation kind of an operation,
right.
and I've never felt that way, which I'm happy about, right? God's been good to me that way, but to count it a privilege to be doing what He's called me to do. I sometimes think about, were there times lost, or was it just God's timing? And I have to believe it was just God's timing. This church was in need. I was feeling a pull in that direction, and God lined things up and made it happen. And it's been a real privilege to serve this community.
Yeah, and I mean, just since you've been here, I mean, watching this growing from meeting at the gym in the school, mm-hmm. to meeting other places, Webster Hall, places mm-hmm. like that, to building our own building, and watching this coming up, and then mm-hmm. Even in all of that, just watching things grow has been awesome, and I have to tell you, it's a privilege to be able to I'm glad that I've been here with you in that, and it's been a fun ride, and
it is.
So who knows how much longer it's going to be, right?
Right.
So maybe if we get lucky, Jesus will come back next week and we're all done.
Yeah.
So, well, I really appreciate being able to talk with you tonight a little bit, and hopefully we can do more of these.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, it's fun.
This is fun.
Yeah.
So, again,
and I do think I say this from the pulpit every once in a while. It's. When you drive looking out the windshield, but if it is good every once in a while to look in the rearview mirror and to see where you've been, and so a little bit of that is good. So yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Amen to that. So, well, again, this has been another Microcast with WMBC with Tom DuBois, and I'm Gene Boucher, and see you in church on Sunday.